The American authorities, they have announced that they wish to train another terrorist group, equip that group, and send them to Syria to fight.
You mean the Free Syrian Army?
You can call it whatever you wish, sir. Be that as it may, it is a group. It is another group that, as they have announced, I'm not sure what their plan is. They say we wish to train these folks in another country, military training, and they even announced the time frame. With whose permission? With whose authority?
When one is at war, beginning stages, the actual attacks, or the necessary cleanup, one facet is always to be considered: who the actual enemy is. At the moment, America and allies are ostensibly fighting ISIS and other terrorist killers. But in the end game, it has to be in sight from the moment it all begins. We are training rebels to assist an effort. But who are we really training them to eradicate? Welcome to MidPoint. Currently an officer in the United States Navy and a graduate of Harvard Law School, he is a contributor to Blue Force Tracker. And the views expressed here are his own and not those of the U.S. Navy or the Department of Defense. Joshua Fiveson joins us today. Joshua, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
There is an opinion by many people, and we actually had a rather good discourse earlier in the show discussing exactly who we are training to defeat. There's now a thinking that if we are training the Syrian rebels, that what we need to be doing first and foremost is finish the job and have them go right after al-Assad at this point and immediately start to think about the end game, and that is taking care of Syria. Should that be at least in the thinking process of what we do as a military? Because again, we come down to the thinking that many people say, we get into wars and sometimes we don't finish the job.
Well, here's the thing, Ed. We really need to focus on, yes, the end game is obviously of preeminent importance, but what we can do. So right now, the focus is on ISIS, and rightfully so, because they present one of the gravest threats in the region. Now, whether Assad's regime actually contributed to the growth of ISIS is another question. But at the moment, the existing international mechanisms, the framework of international law, is pointing in such a direction that the attacks must be and are rightfully pointed towards ISIS. So to say that it is a bifurcated approach, a bifurcated war, it implicitly might be correct, but explicitly and palpably is more properly focused on ISIS, and the power of our targeted attacks are aimed at ISIS alone.
Well, you certainly are going after ISIS, and there are those who believe at this point, it's come out in the last couple of days, that as we go after ISIS, we are actually in many ways helping Assad's regime, and we are helping him get back into power. Is that not, and should that not be a concern? Because sometimes the enemy of my enemy is not always my friend.
This is very true, but sometimes the enemy of your enemy is still your enemy. And that's the perverse situation we're facing here. Yes, there's a strategic alignment of interests. Assad would like us to strike against ISIS because at the moment, ISIS doesn't present a grave threat to him. They're largely in the northern region, working against the moderate rebels who we're seeking to arm. So whether we leave ISIS as it stands, they're attacking the rebels and helping Assad. If we attack ISIS, it also helps Assad to the extent that we're preventing a future issue that he's going to combat.
What about Assad himself, the United States, and the possibility, some have pointed this out as well, that he may welcome the fight? As odd as it may sound, he may welcome the United States coming after him because he's got Russia on his side, he has other Arab allies, he has other people who would not be very happy to see it, and certainly Iran could get involved. So maybe in many ways, he's not afraid because it might help him in many ways. Is that any consideration here at all?
You know, anything could be argued. Anything could be argued. And while it's very clear that Assad is a brutal dictator and has done unspeakable things to the Syrian people, I don't think that he's strategically inept. Right now, he enjoys a position that he probably would like to stay in. The situation is such that he is the worst, he is the least bad of the options. He's the best bad option. Basically, there are so many actors in this situation that we, being the international community, are afraid of what might come in instead. If we take out Assad, we have al-Nusra, the other al-Qaeda affiliates, ISIS who are going to want to take his place. If we take out ISIS, Assad is going to want to continue enjoying his authority. So to say that he welcomes an international armed conflict, I think would be a bit too much, painting too broadly, because that would disrupt the perverse but enjoyable scenario that he's created.
There's also a thought here about the Free Syrian Army. You talk to some people and they will tell you that this is an answer. Others will tell you that they're nothing more than just a loose collection of moderate rebels here. And now you have members of the Free Syrian Army saying, we don't need any more training. We have enough soldiers. What we need are quality weapons. Granted, they probably need quality weapons, but isn't it fair to say this is still a fighting force? And you can't see this maybe, but I'm using the old air quotes here. Fighting force, perhaps, that needs all the help they can get.
At the end of the day, there are so many shifting lines amongst the sectarian civil war that's going on. The Free Syrian Army is but one group. And at the end of the day, our now explicit dedication to arming them and training them is an attempt to create a side, because thus far there are so many actors and so many interests that there isn't one tangible force, there isn't one tangible side. But the efforts to arm them, 2 years ago, Congress gave, quite uniquely, a pass to a nonprofit to help fund the Free Syrian Army. And actually, just last month, the nonprofit went under. It no longer exists. So the idea that these people need to be supported has long existed, but it's more of a momentum issue. We're trying to build the international momentum, it seems, to create one side to work against these multiple bad actors.
Speaking of bad actors, I only have about 15 seconds left. What's your opinion on getting involved with Iran in any way, shape, or form?
Obviously that's always on the table, and that's another issue that needs to be considered. But given the highly volatile nature of the situation as it currently stands in Syria and Iraq, I think the real emphasis needs to be on focusing and countering the threat that ISIS poses to not only the region, but the world at large.
We wait and see what the president does next. Joshua Fiveson, thanks so much for being here. We'll look forward to it again.
Thank you for having me.
All right, next hour here on MidPoint, Iran cannot and should not be trusted, especially when nukes are in the mix. And after the break, the end of a sporting era, and the reason why there are sometimes still role models in sports. It's all coming up next, right here on MidPoint, where we question everything.